For the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Rawson, would you please take a roll call attendance of council, please?
Mrs. Ackerman. Here. Mr. Drake.
Here.
Mr. Horniak.
Here.
Mrs. Paula. Here. Mr. Reeves.
Here.
Mr. Salander.
Oh, here, sorry.
Mr. Wallensack.
Here. Thank you. Please note all council members are here this evening. Also present at tonight's meeting is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Mazer, Clerk of Council Cassie Rawson, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Chief of Police Brandon Began, Assistant Chief of Police Ryan Spanger, Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien, Assistant Fire Chief Mark Mullins, Finance Director Nick Roman, Parks and Recreation Commissioner Tim Borton, and Building and Zoning Commissioner Steve Schrake. Council, the first item on the agenda for this evening would be the approval of the minutes from the January 22nd, 24 regular council meeting and the February 5th, 24 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move to approve the minutes from January 22nd of 2024 of the regular council meeting and the February 5th, 2024 Committee of the Whole as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second. Second by Mr. Drake. Council, any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved for the January 22nd, 2024 regular and February 5th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. Thank you. We'll move on to persons and delegations. We do have a number of people set in to speak this evening, a total of 3. What I will say to everybody here, while we will try to make sure that we answer any questions that are possible, what I would ask everybody to do is as you come up, please just say your name and your address for the record. And I would ask you to make sure you're addressing council. We don't want to have cross conversation in the crowd. Make sure you're addressing council. We may or may not have a response or answer to your statements or concerns this evening. It may be a follow-up meeting that's done with that, but we would go ahead and proceed in that regard. So with that, our first person on the agenda is Ron Gladio. And we'll just have to say your name and your address for the record, please.
Ron Gladio, 512 South Lellendorf, President of Gladio Home Center on Navarre Avenue here in Oregon. Why aren't we keeping tax dollars local when there's a local solution? You know, I'm here because we have a bid in for some mowers, and I know I saw the agenda last night on Facebook, and to my behest, it was decided that it looks like we're going to send our money to Michigan to buy mowers, when I think there's a great local solution here. You know, we're representing Exmark. I know we quoted 2 different mowers. I think Exmark is the mower that really fits the needs, and it's the #1 commercial mower in the industry, and it's that way for a reason. You know, are there other good mowers out there? Absolutely there are. You know, we supported Gladio Home Center. We have all the parts. We're 5 minutes away. You know, we have 3 service techs that are, you know, factory trained to back up our equipment. And we offer pickup and delivery if there's a need for a downtime mower. If they're out in the field and something happens, for gosh sakes, they bring it in. If we got a downtime mower, which we usually do there for them, a commercial mower, they load it up, they go out and they keep mowing. It's probably half our business is commercial on the mower side of it in that division. And those guys want to keep mowing. Money, you know, time is money to them. They don't want to be down. You know, and that's why 95% of them run Exmark because it's a proven commodity in the industry. I mean, they last, they hold up well. They're known for probably the best cut in the industry. And I know what we quoted was the X Series, which is the top of the line Exmark. And when we quote that, it is state bid pricing. So the city would actually get a better price than all the commercial contractors out there running them slightly, because that's all controlled by the manufacturers in the state, that bid pricing. So we are at state bid pricing. I think we're within $440 of the price that we currently have here. So, you know, I guess to me, I like to keep the money local, because when it comes in locally here, I have 32 people that I'm representing here that work for us. I do a great job. A lot of them live in Oregon. You know, their money stays here. When the money comes back in, we can support those jobs. And, we love to support Oregon. We've got a great community. I've lived here my whole life. We support the fire department. Thank you guys. I know, Mark, you guys went over a few times for a few false alarms. I'm sorry. We had one a while ago. They do an awesome job. The police department, you guys are there when we need you. We have a great community. And I don't know if we can keep it great if we send money when we have a local solution that is reasonable. I understand if the price is way out there or something. When we have a local solution, I think the money should stay here, whether it's myself up here or whether it's another local business, whether it's Dunn Chevy or whoever it may be. I would be here supporting them, because that's the way I think it should be. Because if we keep the money here, we have a strong community. And who doesn't want Oregon to be the best? I'm not a Chiefs fan, but I want to be the Chiefs. You know what I mean? I don't want to be the Bears. I'm a Bears fan. For that to stay, obviously, the money needs to stay in Oregon. We have a great school system. We love to support that. That keeps our community strong. And that's what we're here for. So thank you for your consideration. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Okay.
Very well. Any questions for Mr. Gladio or comment?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Reeves.
I've been in conversation with Mr. Gladio here earlier today. I've also talked with Mr. Roman and Mr. Henninger from the Streets Department, and if we could just get a synopsis of the reasoning about what we're doing, or the whys from Mr. Roman, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Roman.
Mr. President.
Let's go there. We'll come back to you, Mayor.
All right. So, and then the mayor can certainly add to my comments. So we had an item on for tonight, and Mr. Henninger had gone out for quotes for mowers. Was in our budget. What is in the, and this item isn't put on tonight's agenda, but we're asking for that tonight. There were 4 quotes, and one was from the firm in Michigan. It was for a Wright mower, W-R-I-G-H-T. Gladio provided 2 other quotes. One was for the Exmark, the other one was for a Ferris, and then a Kubota, a quote from the Kubota. But it is our job to look at the lowest and best bid. It is always just price,
Understand.
I from hearing Keith's comments, the Wright mower, especially next to a Ferris, I think they looked at the 2 side by side, felt that the Wright mower was a very heavy duty mower. It had bigger tires, better slope stability. It is more heavy duty. There's less moving parts, had a 1 extra year of warranty, and it's the lower price. And you're right, there is always the state purchasing, but vendors can go lower than state purchasing if they wish. And when we're out to get quotes, the hope is that they do that. Now, whether it's just a one-time deal or not, the Wright mowers normally are a more expensive motor. They're up in line with Kubota. They are a heavy-duty mower. You correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a very good mower. But we're getting a discount of like $4,800, and it's good for the next. The reason I asked Steve for this to be on tonight's agenda is that's a limited time. It's like 15 days. So we asked to put it on for tonight. We go to Gladio for materials all year.
Appreciate it.
It's not just police and fire. It's not police and fire, but it's across the board. I mean, we like Gladios. Trust me, we go there all the time. It's just that for this particular bid, we feel the Wright mower is a better. When we're talking about heavy duty going up and over a curb, we think it's going to last longer than the Exmark and the Ferris. It is the bottom line. And at this point, because of this special cost, it's the lowest price too. So we feel it's the better piece of equipment at the lowest price. It's hard for me to say it's not the lowest and best bid. I get, we do prefer to go to Dunn's and Bauman and the local vendors, trust me. But at some point, it's hard for me to say, wait a minute, to not go with the best piece of equipment at the lowest price, it's kind of hard for me to do. That's all.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mayor Safarian.
And when I first heard this come up was earlier today, and Mr. Reeves contacted me and I said, well, we gotta go to our professionals in here. And that was Mr. Hedinger, because
Yep.
we don't micromanage the department. We have to trust in what they come up
He
with.
does a great job.
So Mr. Roman said about the Kubota was one of the quoted pieces of equipment. And we have experience with the Exmark. We have experience with Hustlers. We have experience with Simplicity, Steiners from the past. And in this particular use, Mr. Ettinger made me aware of that we've had significant repair problems with all of them, with an exception to probably the Kubota, had the fewest repairs. And the Wright and the Kubota were similar in build, and what for this application he thought that it was the best tool for the type of work we were doing. And that's why that choice was made. We do go out of our way to try to attract local vendors. Sometimes they didn't even bid on things. We halted a bid to go contact them. We do everything we can do to get our local vendors involved. Sometimes they don't provide a piece of equipment with the service that we're looking for. But if they do, we're first to do everything we can to try to make that purchase happen through them. That's all I have to say right now. We have Mr. Henninger here too to back up what his decision is that we were honoring.
I guess, can I?
Fair enough, absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, I just guess your point. I mean, I go, you guys aren't on mowers every day. I mean, I deal with it every day, but Exmark's number one in the commercial industry for a reason. They have center mounted gas tank, which is low for center of gravity, so they will handle the steepest of hills, you know, and they have a 1/2-inch thick casters in the front, which a lot of, you know, if guys go over a curb with the front caster wheel, they're supposed to back over curbs. That's just all how a mower should be run.
And Ryan, let me,
So I guess when we're talking about it, I'm not debating that it's not a good mower, but if you have the number one mower, you know, and you said Ferris, I know I'm talking to Exmark here. It is number one in the industry. And like I said, that's what the commercial guys run, and they run a lot of different equipment, you know? And locally, I would think rather than running up to Michigan, it's save us a lot of money and time here, you know? In our service department, I don't know what they had. Like I said, we got 3 techs, and you know, we live on service. That's what we do. Anybody comes in our place understands that that's our goal. We want to be the best, just like we want Oregon to be the best.
Very good. Mr. Roman, go ahead.
And Ron, I
Close with
appreciate
this.
that. I think to me though, and as much as I'm not on a mower, okay, I can tell you that. And Keith has his experience, but the credit to Keith is he does his research, but he also takes the people that are actually working on the mowers with him. He takes his mechanic that's going to work on the equipment with him. It's a group decision, and I give credit to Keith for doing that. So we do take this very serious. So trust me, it's hard to go to the outside. I'm telling you. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Fladger.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ms. Ackerman.
This thing sooner or later. I understand, Mr. Henninger, it's his job. So based on, you know, you looked at the machine and you said you took some guys and you did a test drive, but we don't have one, right? And we've never had a Wright mower in the, I mean, I'm asking, I don't know.
That's correct.
And so I trust your judgment about the machine, and that's your job to, you know, to make it, you know, have an opinion about the machine, but I believe it's councils and finance area of the city that has to consider the multiplier effect on our community when we decide whether we're going with a local or out of state, and how when you deal with local, and I know you have a decision to make about whether, you know, to weigh that out, but I just want everybody to consider when you do purchase from local family businesses or locally owned businesses, that recoups a lot more money than just that face value of the purchase. And so, you know, in this position, I've been doing a lot of research and something every consumer should know, and everybody that's responsible for tax dollars is, direct impact, indirect impact, induced impact of the multiplier effect, meaning it creates jobs here, which is income tax for us. It's a snowball effect when you purchase locally. So just keep that in mind, how it benefits us in so many more ways than that initial price. And I'm part of family business, so of course, I mean, Ron, they were competitors, so I would have no reason, but it's local. Local is a lot more, very friendly competitors, but it's a good family. But I just hope everyone considers that. We're not questioning whether you like that machine better, because coming from a farm and a equipment dealership background, everyone's got their favorite, they'll only buy green, John Deere green, they'll only buy red, they'll only drive this, only drive that. And I think they're all good machines. I went through the quotes and really, I got online and I researched comparisons, which is the better machine, what were the pros and cons, and yes, I do know about lawnmowers, so don't look real surprised. But just keep in mind how the ripple effect of purchasing local would far outweigh the $400 difference. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman. Council or the administration, any other comment or response?
Mr. President,
Mr. Drake.
Paul, I talked to you earlier about this because when I read it, I did some research. I know when I worked at the city and the street department for over 23, 25 years, the Kubota, I was here when they got that. I believe it was in 2014. That thing, it was like a tank, but it cut horribly. And when I seen Wright, I'd never heard of a Wright lawnmower. I know there's new companies since I've been out of the business, but I did look, like Ronnie said, at different websites that the Exmark, which I used a lot of times, and I know we use it at the cemetery a lot when a John Deere was down. I mean, that thing, you couldn't hurt that thing. We'd hit tree stumps and it'd keep running. So, and I trust Keith's judgment. I work for him. I have no problems with Keith. I trust Paul also, but for what, I believe it was $600 more at Gladjoe's.
But again, we're not comparing apples to apples, and just keep in mind, it's the earmark.
Okay, but that's an opinion though.
Right.
I could say I think a Chevy's better than a Ford, but I can't prove that.
No, I understand that.
And I know it's the middle of winter. I'm sure they weren't able to go out and mow anywhere. Were they able to mow up there, Keith, when you guys went?
No, we just took one out and test ran it
Okay,
up and down.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, any additional comments or questions? Certainly, we'll have an opportunity to debate this as the item comes forward this evening as well. Mr. Gladger, thank you for bringing that to the council's attention. Next person we have from Rita's Soups. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Quinn McDougall, and Sean.
Try that one.
Yeah, I'm going to help.
Sean Yaprotter here, or McDougal. You can call me McDougal.
All right, we'll go with that. We'll ask you to state your names, address for the record, please.
I'm Sean Yaprotter here, 4450 Island View Drive, Oregon, Ohio.
Quinn McDougall, 1135 Earlwood, Oregon, Ohio.
Okay. Well, we've been asked by Steve Solander to present today our community outreach program that we do and support out of St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Oregon. I'm just going to give you a little background of how our outreach program started. My mom was Rita McDougall, and I know quite a few people in here know the McDougall family. My mom, after she retired, she really started to work at doing community outreach, philanthropic activities to help others. She was nominated as a nominee for the Jefferson Award in 2017. Some of the other things that she did crafts. She was an artist. She raised over $3,000 to send teenagers to help build Habitat from Humanity homes in Kentucky. She started a community garden with us kids at Magyar Garden in Hungarian town. She was able to procure the lot next to her house in East Toledo, turn that whole lot into a community garden, and anything extra was always given to Cherry Street Mission, Toledo Food Bank, Food for Thought Pantry. She gave over probably 1,500 pounds of food to charity and to others. So she passed away in November 2020. And my brother Quinn, they had a lot in common as they loved to cook and bake. Quinn is a chef, and he wanted to honor my mom. So he started Rita Soups. So every third Saturday of the month, we do community outreach. Our motto is helping our neighbors and community one ladle at a time. And now I'm going to let Quinn explain to you what exactly the program is.
First thing is, thank you for letting us be here. I'm a graduate of Clay High School, culinary program, military cook, so I know how to cook. So let's get to that. I started this program to feed anybody that wants to show up third Saturday of the month at St. Paul's Episcopal, and it has grown leaps and bounds successfully. This year I fed 450 Thanksgiving meals out of our church, and our church is a really small church. It's at the corner of Coy and Navarre. I make about 30 gallons of gourmet soup every month, and we give it out to, there's 180 people we deliver to, and then we serve about 50 people at our church. It's all about, not people that need it, but we want to build it and have people come and enjoy a day of fellowship, if you're lonely or whatever. And when I ask you to come and get a bowl of soup, come get a bowl of soup, and I always give you something to take to somebody else. We all know people that are down on their luck or whatever. Go and help somebody else. It's the third Saturday. This Saturday, I want you all to come and see what we do. This Saturday, our church is having a houseware giveaway that we provide probably 50 to 70 people that come in and get free houseware stuff, from blankets to pots to pans to whatever. And then what else is on the note? Oh, there's some people that help me do this. I'm not the only one. Doreen Robeson, her and members of Hope Church in Oregon provide all my baked goods for me. Mike Armstrong from Michael's Catering has done baked goods and helped me get this thing started. The Gleaners Insurance Company has financially helped me to get where I'm at now. And what? Oh, and Clay. Oh, also I've reached out to Clay Culinary. They've provided soup for me before. And there's a school in downtown Toledo, and I know I'm going to say it wrong, but it's the Maritime
Academy.
Academy. They've done soup for me also. So, if you're not doing anything this Saturday, come and get some soup. We'll be there from 11 to 12:30, and see what this program's about.
And we have a
Very good.
Facebook page, so if anybody wants to follow, or anybody that needs food delivered to their home, we deliver over 160 servings a month to people that are shut in. It has nothing to do with income base. If you've had hip surgery and you live alone and you need food, will deliver to you. It is not income-based, it's need-based. We are all in a position where we need the community to help us, and so that's what we want to do, is help our neighbors and our community thrive and succeed. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
Mr. Wallenzeck.
thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I sure hope to be able to attend this weekend, and whenever a group or family or organization reaches out and provides assistance to the community, you should be commended. And thank you so much for coming here and explaining what you do. And hopefully most of our council members will be able to attend and help you down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenzeck. Thank you, everybody. And I'd echo the comments. Appreciate what you do.
Mr.
Truly
President.
blessed work to be done.
Mr. President.
Mr. Salander.
Yep, I just want to say thank you guys for coming out. I know I've been out there and you guys do some amazing work, and you really, it's all fed with love. So thank you so much for what you do. I appreciate it. Yep. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Final person we have this evening is Reverend Katie Collins. We'll have you come forward, so your name and address for the record.
My name is Katie Collins. I am 5915 Atwell Road in Toledo. So good evening, council. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to come and speak with you tonight. I am the pastor at Faith United Methodist Church on the corner of Star and Coy, right across the street from Eggleston Minor, right across the street from Star Elementary. Tonight, I would like to personally invite you to join us for a free pancake dinner tomorrow night. Piggybacking off of Rita. We're having a free pancake dinner tomorrow night from 5 until 6:30. It is the first time that this church has been gathering together in a very long time, almost over 5 years. So we are taking this opportunity to soft launch an opportunity for a new ministry to happen here in Oregon. This dinner is a launch for a new faith gathering that is going to be called The Table. And it gives a place for people in our community to come for a meal, for fellowship, and for spiritual learning. So beginning on the third Sunday in April from 6 to 7:30, The Table will begin its first meeting and will offer this every month on the third Sunday. I'm looking for community members who would like to develop a partnership with this outreach, and I want to invite each and every one of you to consider your support for this new faith community.
Thank you very much. Council members, sounds like we have an opportunity to have good full bellies this week between soup and pancakes. And I was told this the other day, Reverend, I don't know if you know this or not. Is it National Pancake Day on Tuesday? Outstanding. You can't ask for a much better day than a pancake day. So, council members, administration, Mr. Salander.
Yeah, just Katie, Pastor Katie, thank you so much again for coming out here too. And yeah, I've got my places to go this week. So thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Very good. Anybody else? Thank you again for your service to the community, for what you do. That's all we have for community participation. Mayor Safarian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. Roman, Mr. Henninger, and I, we believe we've come up with something we would like to do that would involve pulling the, I don't even know what item number. 26, pulling item number 26. And what we'd like to do is actually, we would still like to purchase a Wright mower, but one of them, and we'll purchase the other one from Gladio. We'll get the ability to try it out, see how it works, and maybe it'll work great. Maybe we'll go back with X marks, whatever. But this is something that we'll still learn, because we believe that might be better for our situation type of work. And we won't need an ordinance for that because we're under the threshold. So you'll just be able to make a purchase. Yeah, just for two POs. Two
POs.
separate purchases versus one.
All right.
So
So we're removing item 26 from this
I would
evening's agenda.
I would ask that we do that, and but telling you what we will be doing.
What the intention is. Sounds like a fair compromise. Appreciate that.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I thank the administration, but, I know, Mr. Mayor, if you could just repeat what you just said. I think there were, people that would like to know that weren't fully vested in listening.
Okay.
If you would,
The
please.
original item number, which would come across as an ordinance, was to purchase 2 lawnmowers,
Correct.
and they were from the Michigan vendor. And we would need an ordinance for that because it's over the $25,000 threshold.
Correct.
If we purchase 1 from each of the vendors, which is Gladio Home Improvement and the Michigan vendor, we would not need an ordinance. We could just purchase, and that's what our intent is to do. And therefore, we can just make the purchase. We can still see if we can improve our ability if this right mower
To like the one.
does prove out. If it doesn't, that'd be the last one we buy. So we like that opportunity, and this gives us that ability to do that and still work a local vendor also.
And it would not take an ordinance, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I was going to say.
But I didn't want to just say, hey, we're just going to pull this and do this.
Oh, I
Hand
under-
it back. We
Mis-
wanna know it.
Mr. President,
Understand, yes, Mr. Reeves?
thank you. Mr. Mayor, yes, I understand that. I just wanted, I know that at the time, Mr. Gladio was talking to the people that was walking out, so I don't think he got the full gist of it. So that's why I wanted you to repeat it, and I think that's a acceptable solution. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. And I'd also just remind council, even with withdrawing that and being able to purchase without an ordinance, these were budgeted items and approved and put through in our budget process for 2024. So these are an anticipated cost and item that we were looking to purchase. So it's not additional funding that would be looking for to do that. So it's well within the budget constraints as presented. And I would thank the administration for taking another look and finding another solution to that.
And I just want
Go
to
ahead, Mayor.
reiterate the fact that it wasn't the 400, or several $100s a piece difference. We were trying to improve on the serviceability of cutting going over the curbs, cutting the right of way, and just trying to find out the best possible solution we could come up with.
Well, certainly presents an opportunity for comparison at this point. So, all right.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
thank you. Mr. Gladio and crew, I mean, you'd like to stay, you're more than welcome to, but you don't have to.
I wasn't going to let him off with that.
Oh, I was gonna let them off the hook. It looks like they've all worked
It's a
all day.
long agenda. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. I appreciate that. Council, we'll move into our agenda for items this evening. First item I'll bring to council's attention is we will need to, so items 24, 25, and 27 are being presented this evening for consideration and passage. So I would need a motion to add those 3 items to this evening's agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Drake. We have a motion and a second. Council, any objections to moving items 24, 25, and 27 of 2024 to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, the items are added. We'll start in with the first item on our agenda for this evening, which is item 9. And council, I'll remind you that outside of the ones we added on, we did have a committee of the whole presentation and Q&A session with these. But we will ask a very high-level presentation from each of the members of the administration presenting these tonight. And then we'll get into further discussion on the ones we just added this evening. So with this one here, we have item 9 of 2024, presented by Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Mazer. Mr. Mazer, we're going to you.
Yep. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. President. Thank you, council. This ordinance would allow us to enter into an agreement with the, with First Energy, and would allow us to change out the street lights citywide to LED lights. We're recommending the option to pay for everything up front, since we do have funds in the account, in the assessment account and we'll be okay for 2024. We'll evaluate how much we have in that assessment account during the next budget, and then see how we need to, if we need to, do anything to adjust that assessment to recoup costs if that fund does need to be replenished for other services. But if approved, we'll come back to city council with a supplemental appropriation once the First Energy field assessment is done. And then what they do is a field count of how many lights are there, and then we'll get a quote from them, and then we'll come back to city council and get a supplemental appropriation at that point. So just this action today would be to allow the administration to enter into a contract with First Energy to get the process started.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Council, any questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 9 of 2024 as ordinance 9 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an agreement with Toledo Edison Company to provide light emitting diode LED street lighting service to the Toledo Edison Company's own street lighting facilities located in the city of Oregon.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President.
Mr. Wolzak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for passage of ordinance 9 of 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Wolzak.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Reeves. We have a motion by Mr. Wolzak, second by Mr. Reeves. Council, will you take, or Mr. Rawson, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman, Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Paula,
Yes.
Mr. Salander.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Item ordinance 9 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item on the agenda to be considered is item 10 of 2024. And we'll go to Mr. Mazur on this. To the mayor?
Yeah.
Mayor first, then Mr. Mazur on this one.
Well, what I'd like to say, well, Mr. Bora did present this, as we did present all these items up to item number 23.
Mhm.
We have people here that could respond to any of them. They were already discussed. I would suggest
We'll expedite and move
that,
through.
that if someone has a question on any of them, we would respond to it.
Present at that time.
But with all these items, if they don't, we don't want to just re-say what we did last week. So I think item number 10 pretty much says what it is.
Mhm.
To collect the debt, as Melissa had said last week. And once again, any of these other items, if you have any questions, just say, I got a question, we'll have someone here answer it.
Okay, now I was asked if Mr. Mazur would have something to present on this. Mr. Mazur, anything to add to this? Or were you just presenting in Ms. Papora's
Yeah.
absence?
Yeah, that's-
Thank you.
Yep.
Council, any questions on item 10 on this evening's agenda? Hearing none, I will assign item 10 as ordinance 10 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Attorney General for delinquent debt collection and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President.
Mr. Wolzak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for passage of ordinance number 10 of 2024 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Wolzak.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Polliff. So we have a motion by Mr. Wolzak, second by Mrs. Polliff. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mrs. Paula,
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman, Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Salander.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Item 10 of, or ordinance 10 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Item 12 on the agenda again presented. Mr. Borton, anything to add on to last week's information for council? Very good. Council, any questions for item 12 of 2024 for the administration? Hearing none, I will assign item number 12 of 2024 as ordinance number 12 of 2024 and ask Mr. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and commissioner of recreation and parks to issue a purchase order to Outdoor Home Services LLC, DBA True Green, PO Box 9001033, Louisville, Kentucky, for fertilization and weed control during the 2024 season in the amount of $30,886 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move for passage of ordinance 12 of 2024 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. We have motion by Mr. Reeves, second by Mr. Drake. Mr. Austin, can I please have a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Solander?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 12 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item on the agenda is item 13 of 2024. Again, Mr. Borton, anything to add to the ordinance or information? Thank you, Mr. Borton. Council, any questions? Hearing none, I will assign item number 13 of 2024 as ordinance 13 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the Parks and Recreation Commissioner to enter into contracts with Ad Choice, Inc., Mr. Emblem, RCX Sports LLC, BSN Sports, and All American Sports Corp. For uniforms on a per-item basis through December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move for passage of ordinance 13 of 2024 as an emergency measure.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second by Mr. Wallensack. So a motion by Mr. Reeves, second by Mr. Wallensack. Mr. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Solander?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 13 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item on the agenda, item 14 of 2024. Mr. Roman, anything to add to what was presented or discussed last week? Didn't know if you wanted to put a spin on it. Thank you. Council, any questions? Hearing none, I will assign item 14 of 2024 as ordinance 14 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Accepting a bid of the Shelley Company, 1700 Fostoria Avenue, Suite 200, P.O. Box 3100, Findlay, Ohio, for furnishing labor, materials, and equipment for the LUC CR 556 1.83 Coy Road Resurfacing Project, ODOT PID 116040, authorizing the mayor, director of public service, and finance director to enter into a contract with said contractor and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Drake.
I move item 014-2024 as an emergency for passage.
Thank you, Mr. Drake.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Pauloff. We have a motion by Mr. Drake, a second by Mrs. Pauloff. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 14 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item is item 15 of 2024. Mr. Shrake, anything to add to last week's information or presentation?
Mr. President, no, I do not.
Thank you, Mr. Shrake. Council, any questions? Hearing none, I will assign item 15 of 2024 as ordinance 15 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Repealing Ordinance 59, 2011, and amending codified ordinance Chapter 1165 of the zoning code relating to flood damage prevention regulations in accordance with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Wallensack.
thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I moved for passage of ordinance number 15 of 2024 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Wallensack.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. We have a motion by Mr. Wallensack, second by Mr. Reeves. Mr. Rawson, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Solander?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 15 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Moving on to item 16 of 2024. Chief Brandon Began, anything to add to the information presented last week?
I have nothing further to add, Mr. President.
Very good. Thank you. Council, any questions on item 16? Hearing none, I will assign item number 16 as ordinance 16 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and chief of police to approve and extend the equitable sharing agreements and certifications with the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of the Treasury to authorize participation in the federal equitable sharing program for an additional 2-year period and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. And council,
Mr. President,
Mrs. Pollitt.
I move for passage of ordinance 16 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Pollitt.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. We have a motion by Mrs. Pollitt, second by Mr. Drake. Ms. Rossman, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 16 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Moving on to item 17 of 2024 in the agenda, and these will be presented the next, I believe, 7 are presented by our fire department. So we will start with item 17. Chief O'Brien, anything to add to the information presented last week?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not have anything to add.
Okay. Anything on any of the items this evening that we're considering through 23?
No.
Thank you. Council, any questions on item 17 of 2024? Hearing none, I will assign item 17 of 2024 as ordinance 17 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Lucas County Emergency Medical Services, 2144 Monroe Street, Toledo, Ohio, for the purpose of creating and facilitating countywide advanced life support, ALS, services, specifically relating to the East District consisting of the City of Oregon, Jerusalem Township, and Harborview.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mrs. Pollitt.
I move for passage of ordinance 17 of 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Pollitt.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallensack. We have a motion by Mrs. Pollitt, second by Mr. Wallensack. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Item 17 of 2024 passes, ordinance 17 of 24 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Moving on to item 18. Council, any questions for item 18 on the agenda this evening? Hearing none, I'll assign item 18 as ordinance 18 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into a purchase agreement with Boundtree Medical LLC, 5000 Tuttle Crossing Boulevard, Dublin, Ohio, for the purpose of purchasing medical supplies for the EMS and Life Squad units during 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mrs. Pollitt.
I move for passage of ordinance 18 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Pollitt.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salander. We have a motion by Mrs. Pollitt, second by Mr. Salander. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? Yes. Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 18 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Moving on with the next item agenda item, which is item 19 of 2024. Council, any questions on item 19? Hearing none, I will assign item 19 as ordinance 19 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an agreement with Superior Uniforms, 909 Phillips Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, to provide fire uniforms and supplies as required by the collective bargaining agreement entered into between the full-time fire union IAFF and the city of Oregon and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mrs. Pollitt.
I move for passage of ordinance 19 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Pollitt.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallensack. We have a motion by Mrs. Pollitt, second by Mr. Wallensack. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 19 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item is item 20 of 2024. Council, any questions on item 20? Hearing none, I will assign item 20 of 2024 as ordinance 20 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to issue purchase orders to Atlantic Emergency Solutions, Finley Regional Service Center, 1120 Lima Avenue, Finley, Ohio, to provide maintenance and repair services for fire engines and tower ladders and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Ross and council.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Paulo.
I move for passage of ordinance 20 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Paulo.
Second?
Second by Mr. Wallenczak. We have a motion by Mrs. Paulo, second by Mr. Wallenczak. Ms. Ross, will you please take a roll call vote of council on ordinance 20 of 2024?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 20 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Moving on to item 21 of the agenda. Council, any questions on item 21? Hearing none, I will sign item 21 as ordinance 21 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to issue purchase orders to Tri-County Tire, 7511 Jerusalem Road, State Route 2, Oregon, Ohio, for the purchase of tires and to provide basic maintenance for fire department vehicles and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Paulo.
I move for passage of ordinance 21 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Paulo.
Second?
Second by Mr. Wallenczak. We have a motion by Mrs. Paulo, second by Mr. Wallenczak. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council on ordinance 21 of 2024?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 21 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Moving on to item 22 of 2024. Council, any questions on item 22 on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I'll assign item 22 of 2024 as ordinance 22 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to issue purchase orders to American Enterprises, Inc., 5508 Navarre Avenue, Oregon, Ohio, to provide maintenance and repair services for the fire department vehicles and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Paulo.
I move for passage of ordinance 22 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Paulo.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake. We have a motion by Mrs. Paulo, a second by Mr. Drake. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 22 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. Moving on to item 23 of tonight's agenda. Council, any questions on item 23? Hearing none, I'll assign item 23 of 2024 as ordinance 23 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor, fire chief, and the city of Oregon to enter into affiliation agreements from time to time without the requirements for further legislation to be adopted by council with local adult education programs, industrial fire brigades, career centers, and other fire departments to train at the Oregon Regional Fire Training Center for the purpose of firefighter development and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Paula.
I move for passage of ordinance 23 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Paula.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salander. We have a motion by Mrs. Paulo, a second by Mr. Salander. On ordinance 23, Mr. Russell, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 23 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. We'll move on to the next items, and these items have not been through a committee of the whole meeting, so we will have some presentation of the information included. The first two are items that were discussed last week, but being re-presented for consideration this evening. With that, we'll start with item 24 of 2024, and we will go to Finance Director Nick Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ordinance 24 is to authorize a supplemental appropriation for the Boom Fest event. Just for clarification, it is for $30,000 to be added along with the already approved $30,000 in the budget, bringing the total city funds to $60,000.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mayor Sperry and Mr. Mazur, anything to add?
I think we spoke about it quite a bit last week. I will do my best to collect money from business and industry, and we may not use that all. We likely could, or whatever I'm able to solicit could add to it. Having the ability to have a headliner, although I know Mr. Salinger did a survey and it comes out one way, but this is something I've been doing since 2010, and I kind of do a survey with the people every year, and I find it that the headliner is very appealing to the people. That's why I do it. Do it for me. I don't need the event, but I think the community looks forward to the event. So
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Council, any questions on item 24 of 2024?
Mr. President,
Mrs. Ackerman.
am I correct in understanding that when if the 30,000 were to be removed from the community events, it would leave approximately $349 to cover any other community event for 2024?
Mr. Roman, I'll ask you to address. You
Well,
understand the question?
I believe so. I believe I understand the question, but, so this is only to add an additional 30,000. So it's not taking away the 30,000 that was already approved in the budget for the community events fund.
Okay.
Does that
So
make
I was looking in the budget book and it said that there was $30,349 and then the account numbers match these on here. So they were approved to be budgeted, but we have to do that again tonight, correct?
This is only to add the additional 30,000
From the community events account, which is,
from the general fund to the community events account.
okay.
If I can, maybe I can add some clarity to that. So I think the original fund balance was 30,000 plus. This
Mhm.
adds another 30,000 into
The
that.
community
So the
events.
intra-fund, so our ending balance will be 60,000 plus the 304, whatever it was.
Mhm.
So it'll be just over 60,000, which is the expected city investment into Boom Fest for 2024. Am I saying that fair?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
yeah, we spend over $100,000. What's that? Okay.
Folks, we'll keep order from the back and forth. There was an opportunity to present in the evening. Council, any additional questions on item 24 of 2024? Hearing none, I will assign item 24 of 2024 as ordinance 24 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing and directing the finance director to make supplemental appropriations and interfund and intra-fund transfers on an as-needed basis for fiscal year 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Rawson. Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
it's an emergency. I move for passage of ordinance 24 of 2024. It's an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second?
Second by Mr. Drake. Council, we have a motion by Mr. Reeves, a second by Mr. Drake. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? No. Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Salander?
I really struggled over this for the last week, all over the place and talking to multiple people. I support Boom Fest completely and the going forward with it. But I think we just need to look at getting more donations and so forth. So my vote today is no.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Thank you, council. On item ordinance 24 of 2024, the ordinance passes with a vote of 5 yeas and 2 nays. Moving on to item 25 of 2024 with presentation by Mr. Roman. Is there anything to add to last week's discussion?
There's nothing to add.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions on item 25 of 2024? Hearing none, I'll assign item 25 of 2024 as ordinance 25 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing and directing the finance director to make supplemental appropriations in interfund and intra-fund transfers on an as-needed basis for fiscal year 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move for passage of ordinance 25 of 2024 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second by Mr. Wallensack. We have a motion by Mr. Reeves, second by Mr. Wallensack on ordinance 25. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? Yes. Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
yes,
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 25 of 2024 passes with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays. We'll move on to the last item in our agenda, which is item 27 of 2024. And again, presented by Mayor Mike Safarian and Police Chief Brandon Beacon. Chief, I think we're starting with you. Are we going to? Okay, Chief Beacon?
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to enter into an agreement with Lindy. They are an affiliate with the TRC refinery. They're going to be doing a shutdown beginning February 20th, running till about April 4th, or I'm sorry, April 6th. They'll need one officer in the morning, one officer in the evening, and this agreement will just allow us to bill them for the cost of that and receive those funds.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Anything else from the administration?
Mr. Horniak, I'm sorry, I would like to add one more thing. We got this agreement last week. It does start on the 20th. That's why we brought it as an emergency measure this time around on short notice without the meeting last week.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. And I would echo that, and I would thank both chiefs, Chief and Assistant Chief, for presenting that. Great communication, for sharing the information. Same thing from, the mower piece from this evening. There is a time-sensitive matter with February 20th starting services, which is the need for walk-on. So again, thank you for communicating that information. Council, any questions on item 27 of 2024?
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
I just for clarification, Chief Began, this doesn't take away from our road service, correct? Is this overtime for some and then they go home, or how does it? I don't remember how it works.
Mr. President,
Yes, Chief.
this is all overtime, so it doesn't take anybody away from the road services at all. It's an overtime basis. They put it out and are given those positions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. And I believe for clarification that the contract allows for whatever the cost is the pass on for providing the service. So we're made whole on the hours, even though it is overtime.
Correct. Yeah, we charge a overall rate, which includes the officer's rate and the vehicle for that. So it covers everything.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Council, any other questions on item 27 for this evening? Hearing none, I'll assign item 27 of 2024 as ordinance 27 of 2024 and ask Ms. Rawson to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and chief of police to enter into an agreement with Lindy Inc. to provide traffic control services through the Oregon Police Division under the terms listed on an as-needed basis and reimbursed, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Rawson. Council.
Mr. President,
Ms. Paula.
I move for passage of ordinance 27 of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Paula.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salander. We have a motion by Mrs. Paula, a second by Mr. Salander. Ms. Rawson, will you please take a roll call vote of council on ordinance 27?
Mrs. Paula?
Yes,
Mr. Salander?
Yes.
Mrs. Ackerman? Yes. Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Thank you, council. Ordinance 27 of 2024 does pass with a vote of 7 yeas and 0 nays, which concludes all the agenda items we have for this evening. So we'll move on to the mayor's report. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and council, you have before you the correspondence from the fire department and Chief O'Brien. And I will be asking, excuse me, for your concurrence to fill the position of battalion chief of training in the fire department. And I fill it with Jason Wells of 5717 Pontiac Circle, Northwest, North Canton, Ohio, 44720. You'll be placed at step 2, pay grade 39, which is an hourly rate of $48, 13.66 cents. which is an annual salary of $100,124.18. The startup effective date is February 26th of 2024. And once again, I ask your concurrence in the appointment to Battalion Chief of Training to Jason L. Wells.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Council.
Mr. President,
Ms. Pollitt.
I move to concur with the mayor's hiring of Jason Wells as Battalion Chief of Training of the Fire Department effective February 26, 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Pollitt.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wolanzak. Council, we have concurrence of the appointment with a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, council, mayor concurs with the appointment and moves on. Anything else, Mayor?
I will conclude my report with that. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mazer.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mazer. Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did have a Safe Routes to School plan update as well as a draft plan. And I appreciate everybody that showed up tonight for that. It was a short meeting, but we did get information, and I just want to let council know that the timeline to submit a grant application for Safe Routes to School is due March 1st. So our plan next week is to not only ask for council's adoption of the plan, but actually the first grant application. So I know next week's the committee of the whole, and the following week's the council, but it's tight. My ask is, and certainly anybody listening, just take a look at the city website. You'll see on the front page, the Safe Routes to School. It'll show you the draft plan. It lists projects. If you see an idea that you like or an idea you don't like, please let us know soon, is all I'm asking. So that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to set a rec meeting, Parks and Recreation for the purposes our quarterly meeting. Next 2 weeks from today on the 26th, February 26th at 5:30, and we'll hold it in the council conference room. If need be, we can come out here. And like I said, the purpose is our quarterly meeting and get an update on what's going on with our press box and concession stand. That's it from my standing committee. Ms. Rawson, I cannot thank you enough. If it made that an awful lot of work for you with these tabs, I tell you what, it's made it, it's amazing how much easier it is trying to follow. I can't thank you enough. I know I had talked to you a couple times about possibly adjusting it, but this is perfect. And if it's not too much trouble, please keep it up. If it is, you can drop it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mrs. Pollitt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to set a finance/safety meeting for Monday, February 26th at 6 o'clock. After a lot of, we had a really good discussion between Dennis Wolanzak and I, and we are going to call this, this is in regards to the safety levy. Now, though we had talked about the levy for the fire department, but we really do think that it's important to consider the police department as well, because they have needs that need to be addressed. So this would be talking with both of those departments in regards to the strategic community support for the safety levy. And that, again, will be held Monday, February 26th at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Mrs. Pollitt.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wolanzak.
Thank you, Mr. Hornick. I'd like to set a finance committee meeting for, Ms. Powell, Councilwoman Powell and I had a long discussion this afternoon. I think it is important to look at the safety services as a whole when we talk about future funding sources, not strictly on the fire side. So administration, I should have spoken with you. You and I had talked about it in the past, so I took the liberty of mentioning it to Ms. Pollitt that as we move forward, I think we need to, as a whole, look at safety services. And then going back to the Boom Fest, I wanted to express to Mr. Salander, I think most council members do agree that we do look at the funding sources of Boom Fest And Mayor has done a fine job over the last 10, 15 years of developing a great event. But we are all in the back of our minds thinking about the cost of these, of the Boom Fest. But it's an important event for our community, and the mayor has done a great job over the last, 12 years have we had them? 10, and we missed a couple. Yeah. You know, so it has developed into an event that our community does look forward to. So again, but we are conscious about the spending on that we have to stress on the looking at outside resources to help defer the costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walzak. Mayor, briefly.
I'd just like to comment on that. I tried to do different innovative things, whether we charge a user fee to come in. That's part of the uniqueness about it that we don't. And all the kid events are free. So, you know, most places, when they have these different kids events, the kids are coming to their parents constantly for money, money, money. All those things that we provide for them are at no cost. It is unique. What we're really trying to figure out is if we can pull that event off here on this complex this year, and it will give us some more latitude to actually cut some costs and gain some revenue too in the process. Yeah, sure, the objective would be to spend no city money on it, but something of this magnitude is really hard to pull off without startup money for a budget. It is a lot of work. I do enjoy every minute of it, and I vowed to try to make each year better than the following year. Mother Nature has a lot to do with that, but we'll ask her for kindly for a nice day and take what we get. So I'll work hard as I can to drop money and keep the city expenditures down. But I do truly believe that if we were able to get everyone to comment, they would prefer to have a headliner.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Ackerman.
I met with Don Nelson, the city environmentalist, last week, and he's gonna, when it's convenient for his schedule, to take me on a tour around of all of the projects. But he did show me some really great drone footage and mapping and ideas of everything that they're doing. And we discussed trash catchers and waterways, very much like what Toledo has that they receive grant money for. And, you know, prevent to catch it before it gets out to the lake. And then that kind of went into, I'm researching what we can do for enforcement of littering laws. And as everybody drives around the city, it's a mess. I mean, with mainly near the bigger stores along the 280. And it's great when Steve and Omar and their groups go out and pick it up, but I really hope we can work toward, and I know Joel's working on property cleanup, getting property owners to clean up their areas, hold them accountable. But I really think we need to clean up, make a better impression on people traveling through. And it lifts your spirits just if things are not a mess. And we didn't even have enough snow to like keep it covered up all winter. It's right there in your face. But anyway, so it's, yeah, I just really want to work toward if anybody has any ideas about how to enforce the existing litter laws. And I don't want to burden the police. I told the chief, you know, I don't want to put that on them, but what incentives can we give to for people to get out and just police their areas, tidy up on the streets that they live in. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Ackerman. Mr. Salander.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing for my standing committee. That being part of the safety, that was a kind of the first time I heard about that on safety committee, but nonetheless, I do want to thank Chief Began. I did get a chance to go over and take a tour of the police station, and I guess thankfully I had never been back there before, but thank you for that. It was very educational, and my next stop will be getting in touch with Chief O'Brien to take a look at the fire station there as well. But that was it. So thank you. Oh, one last thing. Sorry, the vote on the Boom Fest. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Wallenczak, but for me to sleep at night on my conscience, I had my vote. So thank you. No, I know.
Very
Thank you.
good.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Salinger. Mr. Drake.
Nothing on my standing committee. I just want to bring up something that Mrs. Ackerman talked about the litter mainly along 280. She's right. And Keith will attest to it, and Tommy and Bob too in the back. Keith would have us go out there. He could have had us go out there every day to pick up junk. And I don't know, I can't believe it's just cars sitting at that red light throwing it out. I almost wonder if sometimes the dumpster lids maybe blow off or are open. And I mean, you can go there, you can pick it up Monday and go back Tuesday, and it's just, well, the good thing is the fence catches it, but unfortunately, then we have to spend time and money to pick it up. But I agree, areas like that, if something can be done, I don't know the answer. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. And from my standing committee, just to report out, we did have a meeting this evening at 6 PM. I do want to thank all council members and the members of the administration that were there for coming out. So it was to start the process of discussion of the comprehensive plan for the city of Oregon. I guess we'll figure exactly what we're going to call it as we move down the road. We'll just call it the plan for now. Over the next several weeks, we'll have opportunities to look at that information and consider what we want to do as far as moving forward with the plan throughout the year. So again, I was encouraged and appreciate everybody's involvement, everybody's questions and participation at today's meeting. And again, I just remind you to be thinking about this over the next few weeks for things we want to accomplish, people we want to be involved in this, and also our commitment to the project and the product coming out of that. So thank you all for attending. We will have a follow-up meeting somewhere in the next few weeks relative to the master plan. And we've also got some consideration, discussion, some other things that are before us. So hopefully next week we'll be able to set that meeting date and time. Council, that's all for our agenda this evening. I do have 3 items where I need to set a public hearing for Monday, February 26th of 2024 at 7 PM. For 3 items. First, a renewal application for an agricultural district for David Dreyer for 2.62 acres located at 1301 Bury Road, 3.045 acres located at 1333 Bury Road, and 5.112 acres located at 0 Bury Road, and 0.028 acres located at 1343 Bury Road. The second one is a renewal application for an agricultural district for Douglas M. and Mary K. Nelson for 18.95 acres located at 0 Seaman Road. And the third is for a renewal application for an agricultural district for Thomas N. and Luann S. Schufanecker for 17.306 acres located at 4638 Pickle Road R, and 7.827 acres located at 4664 Pickle Road. So again, that will be on Monday, February 26th at 7 PM. Council, that's all the items we have for this evening. So with no other items before us, I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second by Mrs. Polliff. Council, any objections? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.